pro wrestling, the flame that burns twice as bright often burns half as long. And this man burned so very, very brightly. There was no one who looked like him, no one who moved like him. He did what people thought was impossible and captured the hearts of fans all around the world. He flew to heights few others dared, only to come crashing down to earth. But the tragic accident that paralyzed him wasn't the end, and just a few short years later, he would once again do the impossible. Not fly, but walk. This is the story of one of pro wrestling's greatest innovators, a man who rose from the ashes of a career-ending injury like the phoenix from the flame. His name was Hayabusa. Even if you've never actually seen a Hayabusa match, chances are you've been exposed to his influence. From Will Ospreay to Seth Rollins, Kota Ibushi to AJ Styles, some of the biggest names in wrestling owe a debt to his style and the moves he innovated. The pioneer behind the Phoenix Splash and Falcon Arrow, combining deathmatch brutality with an aerial artistry that was nothing short of elegant. But the allure for Hayabusa wasn't just what he did, it was how he looked doing it. The mask, the makeup, the flowing robes, he looked like someone who had just walked out of a Mortal Kombat game. Hayabusa would almost float to the ring, levitated by the sorrowful and mystic tones of that unforgettable theme song. And when the pageantry was over and Hayabusa stepped into the ring, he gave it all to the craft. Hayabusa wasn't just a wrestler that fans loved to watch, he was a wrestler that other wrestlers wanted to be. This is his story. Now, to talk about the early days of Hayabusa, we first have to look at the wrestling promotion he spent his entire career in, FMW. Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling was founded by Atsushi Onita in 1989. Onita himself is a fascinating case and someone very important to the history of Hayabusa. So let's touch on Onita first. At 16 years old, he became the first ever graduate of the All Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo in 1974. He was AJPW's early junior heavyweight star until a bad knee injury cut that career short in the mid-1980s. Along the way, he'd get himself into some violent backstage trouble in Puerto Rico, accidentally break Bobby Heenan's neck, study under the Funk family in Amarillo, Texas, and learn a hardcore street fighting wrestling style in Memphis. After retiring from All Japan at the tender age of 27, he bounced around various civilian jobs, investing in real estate and gambling clubs before losing all his money and going flat broke. In 1988, though, Onita found his way back into wrestling, this time behind the scenes for a women's pro wrestling organization. That transitioned into a small in-ring return, and by next year, he had formed his own little independent promotion by the name of Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. As that name might suggest, FMW was originally built around a shoot-style identity. In fact, the angle that helped launch the company was a worked feud between Onita and a legit karate fighter. All that shoot-style stuff, though, wouldn't last long. FMW would soon start prominently featuring street brawls and death matches on their cards, the kind of stuff Onita had learned in Memphis. Slowly but surely, the company began to offer a violent and blunt alternative to the established Japanese promotions. And this was the environment in which a young Eiji Ezaki would debut in the middle of 1991. When he first showed up to the FMW dojo for training, the future Hayabusa was a skinny college dropout who had been wrestling on independent shows. That experience, though, was enough to get him through the door, and out of 40 applicants that day, only 2 were selected to enter the dojo. One was the future Hayabusa, and the other was his university wrestling friend, a man by the name of Masahi Honda, better known later as Mr. Genosuke. And their time in the FMW dojo would be difficult. Trained by FMW's number 2 talent, Tarzan Godo, they slept in a hallway, worked part-time jobs in the day, and trained at night. Waking up 6 a.m. each day, they'd finish training at 11 p.m. and clean the dojo until 2 a.m. Like most pro wrestling dojos at the time, the training was physically and psychologically brutal, and the chores and manual labor were endless. In May of 1991, on just 2 hours' notice, he would make his FMW debut. It was a tag match, and it was a win. Ezaki made the equivalent of about $50 for his work, his first professional payment in the world of pro wrestling. Now, this was long before the mask, the high-flying moves, and the name Hayabusa. Ezaki was, at this point, a junior heavyweight wrestler, paying some seriously painful dues. November of that year would see Ezaki paired in a singles match against Sabu, who was an early idol and major influence on him. It was the first of many meetings these two daredevil wrestlers would have over the next decade. Come 1992, FMW packed more than 14,000 fans into Tokyo's Ariake Coliseum for a card headlined by Onita versus Leon Spinks. And yes, that Leon Spinks, the boxer who once beat Muhammad Ali. Buried near the opening of that show, Ezaki teamed with his old friend Honda, now going by the moniker Mr. Ganosuke. For Ezaki, this show was probably special for reasons unrelated to wrestling, because in the crowd that day was a young woman named Harumi, who would later become his wife. Apparently, she saw his picture in the program, fell for him instantly, and began attending shows just to talk to him. And in the ring, Ezaki was evolving. Graduating from the lowest rung on the FMW ladder more than a year into his tenure, he began to explore more acrobatic and athletic styles of wrestling. The big floating moonsaults were starting to come out, the drop kicks were getting higher, and a little extra flair was added to each move. The hints of Hayabusa were there. Meanwhile, at the top of the card, Onita had become a rock star, and FMW was booming, packing 20, 30, and more than 40,000 people in stadiums for their eclectic wrestling variety shows. The promotion was putting on cards that could appeal to just about every type of wrestling fan. There were shoot-style matches between different martial artists. There were hardcore bloodbaths, lucha libre work, great technical pro wrestling with their women's division, and Megumi Kudo in particular, and of course, the over-the-top spectacle death matches that FMW became famous for. No rope exploding barbed wire death matches, electrified barbed wire barricade double hell matches. King's Road, this was not. If you were looking for an edgy, rule-breaking alternative to Inoki and Baba, well, you could find it in FMW. And yet, amid all of this success, Ezaki was still floundering at the bottom of the card. Even his dojo mate and longtime friend Mr. Ganosuke was bound for the main event, leaving Ezaki behind. Something was missing. And in late 1993, half a world away in Mexico, that something was found. It was in 1993 that Ezaki was sent out of the country on a learning excursion, a fairly common practice for young Japanese wrestlers in their formative years. His happened to be to Tijuana, and this sparked an idea. Reinvent himself under a mask in Mexico, something in line with the lucha libre tradition of that country, something like one of his old childhood heroes, Mil Mascaras. After making his way to Mexico, knowing zero Spanish, and having no one there to really help him communicate, things stagnated. He was not getting booked for shows, he was not being trained, but he was able to commission the first of his unique open-top mask designs through a local luchador mask maker. The inspiration for his identity and his costume was a television superhero called Henshin Ninja Arashi, kind of a feudal Japanese warrior ninja dressed in a bird costume. Eventually, a breakthrough did come. Ezaki was set up to train at Rey Mysterio Sr.'s wrestling school, where he'd meet and train with Rey Mysterio Jr. as well. Finally, after months of spinning his wheels in Tijuana, he would get his first match booked. Not as Eiji Ezaki, but as Hayabusa, meaning falcon in Japanese. In the spring of 1994, Eiji Ezaki made a quick trip back to Japan for his debut as Hayabusa on home soil. It happened at an event that would achieve legendary status in the years to come, the Super J Cup. The Super J Cup was a tournament-style event that featured the best junior heavyweights from promotions all around Japan. Tiger Mask was there, the Great Sasuke, Ultimo Dragon, Taka Michinoku, Dean Malenko, and Jushin Thunder Liger, Hayabusa's first opponent back in Japan. While Liger dominates most of the 12 minutes of the match, the still unpolished Ezaki does manage to bring out oohs and ahs from the crowd with nearly every single move, even if they're not quite executed to perfection. Just 3 days after the Super J Cup, Hayabusa was back in Mexico, where finally he would find some success. The star of Hayabusa was rising, and it wasn't long before he was called back to FMW. In August of 1994, Hayabusa made his FMW debut. His opponent? Sabu, his idol and early inspiration. He rounded out the rest of the year back in Mexico, working in EMLL and training with Ultimo Dragon, alongside the likes of Chris Jericho, among others. It was in this training environment where he'd develop one of the most spectacular moves in pro wrestling, the Phoenix Splash. As breathtaking to watch today as it was back then, the Phoenix Splash has the wrestler launch themselves off the top turnbuckle, twist 180 degrees in the air, and execute a 450 splash. It's a technique only reserved for the ultra-skilled and the ultra-brave. If you're looking for the Phoenix Splash being used in more recent times, you can find it in the repertoire of the likes of Kota Ibushi and Seth Rollins. As Ezaki's metamorphosis into Hayabusa continued, back in FMW, change was coming. Atsushi Onita, the promotion's founder, top star, and the foundation upon which all their success was built, was on the way out. He was putting himself through hellish amounts of punishment at this point, having multiple brushes with death thanks to his reckless behavior. And so the decision was made to ride off into the sunset, leave the world of wrestling, and move on to movie stardom. Now, things did not quite work out that way, but that's very much a story for another video. Onita's final match was set, May 5th, 1995, FMW's 6th anniversary show. His opponent was the man who would inherit FMW's future, Hayabusa. It must have felt like a dream come true for the young Eiji Ezaki. 2 years ago, at FMW's 4th anniversary show, he was curtain jerking in the opening match. The year after that, he wasn't even booked. And now, he was about to step into the main event at Kawasaki Stadium in front of nearly 60,000 people. It was a no-rope, exploding barbed wire, time-bomb deathmatch, which meant the ring was surrounded by a barbed wire cage rigged with little explosives that went off whenever they were touched. And after a very dramatic countdown sequence, the whole thing would explode all at once. The first half of this match is classic Onita. Brawling, grounded power moves, struggling to slam one another into the exploding wires. That begins to change partway through, and Hayabusa comes into his own, firing off spinning heel kicks, a Hurricane Rana, and unleashing his own brand of acrobatic offense. And nowhere is this more on display than after the entire ring explodes in a massive ball of smoke. Hayabusa climbs the cage and launches himself into the air for a breathtakingly dangerous moonsault. It misses, and ultimately seals his fate in the match. It's like a metaphor for FMW itself. The explosions ended Onita's era, and Hayabusa's high-flying future began. The perfect way for the new ace of the promotion to take the throne. And on the surface, that's exactly what it appears to be. But dive deeper, and things start to look a little different. Instead of it being Hayabusa's coronation, it just becomes one more opportunity for Onita to advance his own mythology. After the bell rings, Onita sobs through a typically emotional speech about FMW's future, while Hayabusa gets carried away on a stretcher. According to future FMW CEO Soichi Arai, at one point Onita screams at Hayabusa, quote, "You are not enough, but I'm leaving, so you have to keep FMW's fire," end quote. Backstage, we see the new ace of the company looking humiliated in defeat. Nothing about this feels like a passing of the torch. It doesn't feel like FMW is set up for any kind of success in the future. It feels like Onita is still holding on to his top spot at the company, even as he walks through the door. And if this had only happened once, for this one self-indulgent retirement match, it wouldn't feel so frustrating to watch. Unfortunately though, this will become a recurring theme for Onita and Hayabusa as time goes on. In his tell-all book about the promotion, CEO Soichi Arai claims that Onita had always been jealous of Hayabusa on a personal level, shuffling him off to Mexico to get rid of him and undercutting him at various times. Even the way this match is set up does Hayabusa no favors. The original opponent for the big main event retirement show was supposed to be Tarzan Goto, Onita's number 2 man and the wrestler who trained Hayabusa. Goto was a skilled wrestler who could carry more technically limited opponents, but he had spent much of his time in FMW living in the considerable shadow cast by the charismatic founder of the company. And shortly before the anniversary show, Goto walked out. Hayabusa wasn't even the second choice, Mr. Pogo was, but he turned it down after apparently being insulted that he wasn't asked first. As the third name on the list, Hayabusa has to come into a press conference, get on his hands and knees, and beg Onita for the spot. And again, there is a certain level of humiliation to all of this. But last-minute choice or not, Hayabusa more than delivered on his end, and Onita was out the door. The Falcon was now FMW's new ace. There was just one problem. FMW was Atsushi Onita. It was a promotion and a brand built entirely around the cult of personality of its founder. Ticket sales plummeted almost immediately. Just 2 weeks after filling Kawasaki Stadium to standing room only, they performed in front of a crowd of less than 1,000 people. And according to FMW expert BAHU's biography of Hayabusa, even those fans were leaving shows early in some cases. They'd stay for Megumi Kudo, and the building would be half empty for Hayabusa in the main event. It was bad enough that FMW's home distribution video partner decided to pull out. And that massive 58,000-person gate from Kawasaki Stadium? Well, most of the profits allegedly went directly to Onita himself, leaving his former company with little to show for their recent success. It was a tough spot for the 26-year-old Eiji Ezaki to be in. Hayabusa as a character had a grand total of 2 matches in FMW. It was almost like starting the company from scratch. But despite the loss of Onita, despite the financial uncertainty, despite the heavy weight suddenly placed on Hayabusa's shoulders, the new FMW started to stabilize. Less than a month after the big anniversary show, he debuts the Phoenix Splash in Japan. He went on to win the vacant brass knuckles heavyweight title in June after a surprisingly grounded match with Hisakatsu Oya. That match would end with another thrilling innovative finisher, the Falcon Arrow. Then there were the incredible singles matches against Mike Awesome in July and September of that year, the latter of which took place in front of nearly 5,000 people in Sapporo. Ticket sales started to climb back up, and crowds slowly got bigger. Sponsors came on board, and eventually there was a monthly salary instituted for wrestlers for the first time. Hayabusa was doing it. He was bringing FMW back, and he was doing it with moonsaults, 420 splashes, and spinning heel kicks. But this did not come without some cost. Even in 1995, the high-risk wrestling style Hayabusa had embraced was taking its toll. He suffered a serious injury against Mike Awesome in their July match, one that had him coughing up blood and being taken to the hospital in an ambulance. Doctors advised him to take several months off, but he never did. That brought more issues: a torn tricep, ligament damage to his knees, shoulder joint problems, and a serious eye injury, just to name a few. He was apparently in so much pain from various injuries that sleep became difficult, drinking large amounts of alcohol just to help him pass out. It was at this time that he and All Japan ace Mitsuharu Misawa, another man racking up the injuries at an alarming rate, became drinking buddies. And so, in early 1996, an injury angle was booked just to get Hayabusa off the card and into a hospital for some help. And while he was recovering in the hospital, things back at FMW took a strange turn. He read it in the Tokyo Sports newspaper first. Onita returns to FMW. Less than a year after his supposed retirement, less than a year after he allegedly took the payout from FMW's biggest ever show, Atsushi Onita was pushing his way back in. And so, FMW's 7th anniversary show, their biggest event in the calendar year, was set. It would be Hayabusa and Masato Tanaka against Mr. Pogo and none other than Terry Funk in an exploding ring, no ropes, barbed wire double hell deathmatch main event. And Onita would be sitting ringside. The focus was never going to be on the two young guns. And the pre-match promos tell the whole story. Terry Funk rants and raves not about Hayabusa, not even about Tanaka, but about Onita. He says he can't get to Onita himself, so instead he'll go through his proteges and destroy what he calls Onita's dream, meaning destroy FMW. It's all set up to feel like Hayabusa is some kind of stepping stone. The match itself is quite a wild one, and just like a year prior, Hayabusa leaves nothing on the table. Injured and coming off several months of recovery, he destroys his body all over again. But also, just like 1 year prior, it's not enough. He and Tanaka lose the match, and again, there's a bit of a humiliation factor here. His mask is ripped off in the aftermath of the match, and while he's being carried out on a stretcher, Funk and Pogo start a scathing promo on Atsushi Onita. Backstage, an unmasked Hayabusa cries and buries his head in Onita's lap. It all begs the question of how long FMW could keep sending their fans this message before it finally sinks in permanently. The brutality of the match put Hayabusa out for another several months. While he was off, rumors started to spread that he might be jumping ship to New Japan. They weren't true. In fact, a little over a year prior, he had been given the chance to try out for the WWF, and he declined an opportunity to go to IWA with Tarzan Goto and Mr. Ganosuke. And this is perhaps Hayabusa's greatest attribute and his greatest flaw: unwavering, unconditional loyalty. Loyalty to his promotion and loyalty to his own physically punishing style. Eventually, his wounds would heal, and Hayabusa would be back in the ring by August 1996. By the end of the year, the inevitable had happened. Atsushi Onita announced he'd be coming out of retirement. The movie star life hadn't quite lived up to his expectations, and he just couldn't stay away from pro wrestling's bright lights. He'd be coming back to wrestle in Mr. Pogo's retirement match. Onita had used his pre-existing relationship with company CEO Soichi Arai to force his way back into another main event and another show-stealing tearful speech at the end of the match, with his trademark theme of Wild Thing blaring throughout the venue. Hayabusa, for his part, was in a singles match in the semi-main against the Great Sasuke, a skill-based contrast to the 8-man cluster bomb that was the main event. The show on the surface was a success, but behind the scenes it was plagued with problems. According to Soichi Arai, Onita himself took a lot of the profit from the event and managed to get FMW in trouble with their new tape distributor, a key revenue source for the company. Arai would later write about this time period saying, quote, "We gained nothing. It was an extremely strange situation," end quote. And so, FMW headed into 1997 a bit of a confused mess. Change was everywhere. Megumi Kudo, the brightest star of their women's division, was retiring. Her counterpart, Combat Toyota, had already done the same a year prior. Matsunaga, arguably the company's best deathmatch wrestler, jumped ship to the recently launched Big Japan promotion. For Hayabusa, though, there was at least one very good change. His old friend Mr. Ganosuke had emerged from the wilderness of IWA Japan and landed back in the company he started in. Immediately, an angle was set up between the two, with Ganosuke out for revenge against the friend he claimed abandoned him. It was, finally, a Hayabusa-centric storyline that FMW could build around and evolve, one that worked in real-life drama and pitted two very good wrestlers in their primes against each other. And in March of that year, a golden opportunity opened up for Hayabusa elsewhere. He was invited to meet with Giant Baba, the founder and owner of All Japan Pro Wrestling. That meeting must have went well because shortly after it was announced that Hayabusa would be making appearances in an All Japan ring. For those not versed in 90s era Japanese pro wrestling, All Japan was a very different beast than FMW. An established, well-run company, they were a tight organization that put on arguably the best matches in the world at the time. Their main events had become known as marathons of technical and emotional brilliance. Living legends walked the halls of AJPW. Mitsuharu Misawa, Kenta Kobashi, Toshiaki Kawada, Stan Hansen, just to name a few. And now, Hayabusa would get the chance to walk alongside them, reaching a new audience and perhaps a new level of prestige. Suddenly, 1997 was starting to look pretty good for Hayabusa. He made his All Japan debut in April in a tag match, and the crowd is a welcoming one. There's oohs and ahs for every move he makes, and Baba must have noticed, because a few weeks later, Hayabusa appears on one of their big Budokan shows, the finals of the 1997 Champions Carnival Tour. Back in FMW, the storyline rivalry with Mr. Genosuke continued to build, with a singles match booked between the two at the 1997 anniversary show at the end of April. For the first time in years, though, it would not be held at Kawasaki Stadium. While the old baseball field was being renovated, FMW booked the smaller 16,000-person Yokohama Arena, and it easily sold out. Hayabusa and Genosuke would not main event the show, but incredibly, neither would Onita. It would be Megumi Kudo's retirement match that closed the card. Truly a testament to her influence, popularity, and her importance to the promotion. But main event or not, the Hayabusa Genosuke match is exactly what it needs to be. The ace of FMW is outmatched physically, but counters the size and power imbalance with devastating technical moves. Genosuke brings the heat, the hatred, and the jealousy, and Hayabusa brings the spectacle. In the end, Hayabusa beats the odds and wins. He extends a hand of friendship to his old partner, only to be blindsided and beaten. His mask is ripped off and taken as a trophy, and it's clear to fans that this rivalry is far from over. There's even a surprise run-in and a save from Jinsei Shinzaki, a move that would set up their own tag team partnership later in the year. It all just works, and it feels like the right opponent and the right story for Hayabusa to finally get where he needs to be in FMW. On a personal note, Eiji Ezaki also married his longtime girlfriend in April of '97. It was a small, private ceremony, only attended by the bride and groom's parents. Later that year, Ezaki would become a father after the birth of his first daughter. He was on tour when his wife went into labor and would later write that he hoped his daughter would grow up to be anything but a pro wrestler. Back in the ring, Hayabusa and Mr. Genosuke continued their emotional feud over the next few months in FMW. He'd also teamed with Jinsei Shinzaki for a series of incredible tag matches in All Japan Pro Wrestling, including a once-in-a-lifetime team-up with his drinking buddy, Mitsuharu Misawa, with Hayabusa even wearing green for the occasion. In September, he and Shinzaki would go up against Kenta Kobashi and Manikia Mossman in a blockbuster 50,000-person Kawasaki Stadium event. It's the semi-main, but it completely steals the show from Onita and an injured Kanamura in the main event. Sadly, only camcorder footage exists of this due to conflicting video distribution rights between FMW and AJPW. He and Shinzaki would ride this momentum into All Japan's Real World Tag League, without question the most prestigious and important tag competition in professional wrestling, at least at the time. Here, fans were treated to matches where Hayabusa shares the ring with the likes of Steve Williams, Jun Akiyama, Stan Hansen, Toshiaki Kawada, and of course, Kobashi and Misawa. These are some of the best quality Hayabusa matches available, both from a wrestling and a production quality standpoint. In the ring with people as or more skilled than he was, Hayabusa has the chance to shine to his full potential. Back in FMW, Onita had his first in-ring encounter with Hayabusa since 1995 in Kawasaki Stadium. In December, Hayabusa would call back to that '95 match and hit a massive moonsault from the top of a cage onto Onita, pinning him for the win. It would be the first and only time Hayabusa would pin Atsushi Onita. It's an appropriate way to end what could be considered Hayabusa's peak year as a wrestler. Come 1998, FMW was going through a metamorphosis. The promotion had just signed a hugely important deal with DirecTV, a satellite broadcast company. The deal would require FMW to put on monthly pay-per-view events, a different business model than the home video and live event structure that they were built on. But it represented a financial lifeline for the company at a time when they were struggling with revenue, and when wrestling as a whole in Japan was beginning to experience a downturn in business. The trade-off was that DirecTV had a say in how FMW was produced, and began to guide the company in a direction we might call sports entertainment today. meaning less death matches, more skits, more pre-filmed vignettes, more emphasis on over-the-top and backstage-centric storylines. And this new direction would start to show itself on the very first of those pay-per-view events, the 9th anniversary show. The name of the pay-per-view was, in fact, Entertainment Wrestling Live. It featured some very long, drawn-out entrances, pre-tape promos, a gag or two in the ring, and significantly more dancing than you'd expect to see in FMW. But if you look past all of that, there was still some great wrestling happening, and at the center of it was usually Hayabusa. That 9th anniversary show featured a main event confrontation between Hayabusa and his arch-rival Mr. Genosuke. Genosuke was holding FMW's 2 top singles championships at the time, and this match would determine not only who came out on top in their year-long feud, but who could really call themselves the ace of FMW. And there are no underwear gags or dancing segments here. It is a 20-minute barn burner that starts off slow and grounded before heating up to showcase the best that these two wrestlers have to offer. Genosuke is a bigger man, a wrestler who thrives with his feet planted on the mat. He delivers devastating suplex pin combinations and massive lariats. Hayabusa shines in contrast with his tope con hilos, the Phoenix Splash, and Falcon Arrow. There's no need to go over every move or false finish here, but suffice to say, it's another classic from Hayabusa and Mr. Genosuke. In the end, it is Hayabusa who comes away as double champion, and as the ace of FMW. He's been called the ace off and on for the last 3 years, but here, tonight in Yokohama, it feels real and legitimate for perhaps, really, the first time. Just a day later, Hayabusa walked into the Tokyo Dome for a match alongside none other than living legend and All Japan founder Giant Baba himself. That was part of All Japan's 25th anniversary show. Hayabusa's first challenger as double champion would be Masato Tanaka, one of FMW's best young talents. Tanaka was headed to ECW, and this match would be one heck of a temporary parting gift for the FMW faithful. Speaking of ECW, it was August of 1998 where Hayabusa would make his one and only appearance in that promotion, reuniting with Jinsei Shinzaki for a tag match against his old idol Sabu and Rob Van Dam. After a handful of defenses, Hayabusa would eventually lose the double championship to Koto Fuyuki in November. It was a 6-month run with the titles and perhaps the end of the brightest era of Hayabusa's career. The day after that show, Atsushi Onita was finally forced out of FMW during a confrontation at the company office. According to Soichi Arai, Onita had been trying to poach FMW wrestlers for a new company he'd started. That became the final straw in a long list of gripes about Onita's constant meddling and undermining of the company for his own ego. Fast forward to 1999, and the sports entertainment style that had started to creep its way into FMW was now in full effect. Koto Fuyuki had taken over the booking of the company, and DirecTV had their influence on the writing side. Even the company branding was officially changed to include Entertainment Pro Wrestling. The shows began featuring increasingly bizarre and trashy content. Bikini contests, kidnapping angles, dog food matches. One storyline had Soichi Arai's 16-year-old niece getting brainwashed and kidnapped. Another show opened with a bathing suit competition. But what about Hayabusa? Where did all of this leave him? Well, despite the ever more juvenile presentation of FMW and the behind-the-scenes financial turmoil, he did start the year off strong with some stellar wrestling, including a return to All Japan with his old partner Shinzaki. They won the All Asia Tag Team Championship, AJPW's secondary tag titles. He also made an appearance at the Giant Baba retirement show in the Tokyo Dome, teaming with the Great Sasuke and Tiger Mask. If you like junior heavyweight wrestling, that is one hell of a trio. And on a personal note, Ezaki's second child, another daughter, was born in May of 1999. There was, however, one big problem. Hayabusa's injuries were rapidly catching up with him. Years of wrestling a high-risk, high-impact style had left him with a laundry list of physical ailments that eventually were going to lead to permanent, life-changing issues. The use of painkillers, the heavy drinking, the sleepless nights, it just wasn't sustainable. And so a storyline was concocted to get Eiji Ezaki out of the mask and into a more sustainable wrestling style. Like the company itself, he reinvented his image. He took off the mask, bleached his hair blonde, wore baggy street clothes, sported a big medallion necklace and a new tattoo on his chest, and he would now simply be known as H. H was of course still Eiji Ezaki, the man who brought the character of Hayabusa to life. But without the mask, the costume, and some of those breathtaking moves, could he still be the ace? Could he still carry FMW into the new millennium? The big test came at FMW's November 1999 anniversary show, where H faced off against Mr. Ganosuke in the main event, with Shawn Michaels, of all people, as a special guest referee. Ganosuke was impersonating Hayabusa at the time, wearing a similar mask and costume as a way to mock Ezaki. The match is an interesting one and a solid addition to their body of work together, and with these two in the ring, it could never really be bad. But looking back at it now, 25 years later, the presence of Shawn Michaels and the fake Hayabusa gimmick do muddy the waters just a little bit. Despite selling 11,000 tickets, the show may not have been the financial success it looked like from the outside, with FMW spending a small fortune bringing in wrestlers from other promotions. DirecTV in Japan folded less than a year later. A different satellite TV provider would absorb and take over FMW's pay-per-views, but wouldn't pay them nearly as much for it. And so in July of 2000, FMW lost its financial safety net. Considering Soichi Arai had at this point turned to Yakuza loan sharks to keep the company afloat, this could not have come at a worse time. Despite all of this, Hayabusa continued into 2000 and 2001, returning to the Hayabusa persona to boost ticket sales and help keep FMW going. The promotion was under significant financial pressure during these later years, and it was largely Hayabusa's mystique and star power that kept the arenas from being empty. He'd also make appearances in other promotions, both in Japan and in America. He'd show up to video game convention E3 and even act as himself in a low-budget pro wrestling B-movie called Backyard Dogs. Hayabusa was back, and thrilling fans with his gravity-defying style of pro wrestling. But all of that would soon come to a complete halt. On October 22, 2001, Eiji Ezaki would wrestle his last match ever. The lead-up to the match is quite haunting. In a pre-taped vignette, Hayabusa is seen in the staircase at Korakuen Hall. A ghost or demonic figure appears and speaks to him in a menacing voice. This figure talks about Hayabusa being cursed, saying as long as he's in FMW, he'll remain cursed and that his pro wrestling career will end in just a few years. The match itself is the main event of the show. It's Hayabusa against Mammoth Sasaki. Everything starts off typically enough, with a feeling out period, very slow and grounded. Sasaki gets the advantage after some interference outside the ring and starts to hammer Hayabusa with power moves. He dumps him outside the ring, puts him through a table, and buries him in chairs. Hayabusa turns the tables with a typically breathtaking moonsault. And it's after this that things begin to take a tragic turn. About 13 minutes in, Hayabusa goes for a sequence of springboard moonsaults. The first one he hits flawlessly, gracefully twisting in the air and gliding over Sasaki, who's lying on the canvas. In one fluid motion, Hayabusa transitions to the other side of the ring, positioning his feet on the middle rope for the second lionsault. He slips, and instead of getting a full body rotation to land on his stomach, he's spiked directly on the top of his head. Hayabusa never gets up. At first, it's unclear exactly how bad things are. Referee Marty Asami checks on him, and Sasaki even puts him in a light headlock, keeping the kayfabe element of the match going for a few more seconds. But it soon becomes obvious that something is seriously wrong. Arai starts calling his name from the commentary booth, the match is stopped, and wrestlers and staff rush the ring. Minutes pass as worried faces watch a motionless Hayabusa lie in the middle of the ring. A stretcher is brought in and Eiji Ezaki is taken to the hospital in an ambulance. Before that happens, he asks for a microphone to be put near his face and addresses the crowd in the building, asking them not to abandon FMW, not to abandon the company he risked his life for. A true testament to the level of loyalty, of heart, and of dedication that Eiji Ezaki held for FMW and for pro wrestling. He was just 31 years old when his wrestling career came to a tragic halt. The injury had cracked multiple vertebrae in his spine. In just one instant, with just one move he'd done 100 times before, Hayabusa went from defying gravity to bedridden. By all accounts, the immediate hospitalization and recovery was a grueling and dark time for Ezaki. He lay in a hospital bed all day, unable to clean himself, feed himself, or otherwise exist independently. According to BAHU's FMW biography, he lost 100 pounds in a few months, experienced kidney failure, and needed heart surgery after a bacterial infection. Eventually, he would leave the hospital and begin rehabilitation through various therapies. Back in FMW, things were equally bleak. The company folded in 2002, shortly after Hayabusa's injury. It had collapsed under a mountain of debt, losing its star wrestler being the final nail in the coffin. In May of 2002, Soichi Arai, the man who took over running the company from Atsushi Onita, the man who held the entire operation together with duct tape, guts, and Yakuza financing, was found dead. He had taken his own life to provide insurance money for his family and help them escape the debt he'd racked up, keeping FMW alive. Kodo Fuyuki, the FMW booker and many-time opponent of Hayabusa, had been diagnosed with colon cancer and been given 6 months to live. The FMW wrestlers all went their separate ways, forming several different promotions in the wake of its closure. But for Hayabusa at least, things did eventually get better. He applied his trademark work ethic and obsession to his own rehab, eventually regaining the ability to stand up with the help of leg braces. He helped launch a new promotion called Wrestling Marvelous Future, or WMF, alongside his old friend Mr. Ganosuke, and appeared in front of a wrestling crowd for the first time since his injury in August of 2002. Believe it or not, by 2003, Hayabusa was taking bumps again. Though he was wheelchair-bound, he participated in angles for WMF, usually getting attacked, doing commentary, or making an emotional speech to the crowd. And it's hard to think of a better way to get heat than attacking a paralyzed living legend. Unfortunately, WMF suffered from similar money problems as FMW, and it wasn't long before Hayabusa's time there would come to an end. At the same time, his home life was suffering, and he and his wife divorced. As a means to pay the bills, but also to do something new and creative, Ezaki started a music career as a singer and would perform at various events, often wrestling related. From there, he would appear at wrestling events for various promotions over the years, singing, taking pictures, commentating, or just showing up to pop the crowd and pay respects. On one trip to the US in 2006, he even went backstage at WWE's SummerSlam and was reunited with old friends like Sabu and Rey Mysterio Jr., as well as a few new ones. Fast forward to 2015 at Korakuen Hall, the same venue where he became paralyzed 14 years earlier. Hayabusa did something that years ago many thought would never happen. He walked into a wrestling ring under his own power. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, and he still needed some assistance, but he did it. From lying in a hospital bed with no movement to walking across a wrestling ring, it was a comeback story that felt almost too good to be true. Old friends from the wrestling world and his daughters were in attendance, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It really is a beautiful moment that will probably leave you emotional as well. Unfortunately, less than a year after that, Eiji Ezaki's life would come to an end. In the middle of the night, he suffered a kind of brain hemorrhage, a complication from blood thinner medication he was taking. That was nearly 10 years ago, and in 2025, Hayabusa is back. A new Hayabusa has debuted for Japanese promotion 01, and the similarities between Eiji Ezaki and whoever is behind the mask right now are downright uncanny. The new Hayabusa debuted against none other than Masato Tanaka in April of 2025, and teamed with Jinsei Shinzaki in May. And by the way, the current general manager of 01 is Megumi Kudo. It's all a very FMW affair, and it's something that Hayabusa's family and friends have given their blessing to. In recent interviews, this new Hayabusa has stated that while he may not be Eiji Ezaki, he is the same Hayabusa. The same character, the same spirit that took to the ring all those years ago in FMW. As of the writing of this video, we don't know for sure who's under the mask, and I hope we never do. Perhaps if we never know who it is, we can close our eyes and imagine, just for a moment, that Hayabusa really has returned, that the Phoenix has risen once again, and that everything that happened 25 years ago was just a bad dream. If you're still watching this video, thank you. And thank you to the people who support the channel on Patreon and through YouTube memberships. I also need to thank BAHU, also known as Brett FMW. He's the man who runs the FMW tribute site FMW World. So many of the details of Hayabusa's life and translated information about FMW's inner workings came from his biographical work, with his permission. So visit his website and follow him on social media if you want to take a deep dive. Until the next video, thank you for watching.